Welcome to the Games PR Podcast, your regular dose of video game PR goodness. Sit down, relax, as our team of experts and special guests share tips and tricks to help you level up your PR game with media and influencers.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Games PR Podcast. I'm your host Jack, joined by Tom and some very special guests today. Denmark's very own Floppy Club, the creative minds behind one of the year's indie success stories, the musical puzzler Ritmos. We here at Big Games Machine worked with Floppy Club on the campaign for Ritmos and not only had a lot of fun with it, but we all learned a lot as well, which we're going to dive into today. So welcome to the show, guys. Very happy to have you on board. Going to discuss the inspirations behind the game, how we tailored the messaging for the media, and really how a simple concept could make a lot of noise. So welcome to the episode. Introduce yourselves.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
You want to start?
I can start. My name is Niels, and I'm a sound designer. I worked on the sound and music for Ritmos, and a lot more, actually. We are a small studio, so we do a lot of stuff. But that's very shortly about me.
On a postcard,
I'm
I like it.
Asger. I did most of the programming and also the game design, and worked on the game since it was prototype, and took it here 5 years of development.
5 years. I was going to ask how long the game took from when it was first kind of conceptualized to finally coming out this year.
Yeah. It is actually 5 years. We just checked recently, but it's not been 5 years of extreme hardcore development on this game. It's been like in an infancy and then slowly progressing to where it is today. And it's been other places that are very strange from the place that it is now. If that makes sense. Like it's been like in directions where we tried to go in this direction and it didn't work out. So we came back to where we are now.
Hello, I'm here too. I'm just aware that I didn't say I was here, so hello. Self-confessed huge Ritmos fan here, and that's off the working record as well. I love this game. As I was saying before we started the podcast, 3 times all the way through with all of the golden records as well, because I refuse to complete a level without getting the you have to get all the nodes. I don't see how you have to get all the nodes. I refuse to believe otherwise. But yeah, it's great for you two to join us today. I'm looking forward to having a chat about. I was going to say everything Ritmos, but I don't think we have time for everything. But lots of Ritmos related things. It should be fun.
Well, Tom, fun challenge for you then, as we have the creators of Ritmos here. Do you want to go and explain to the audience what Ritmos is? And then they can judge how you do.
I'm looking forward.
I'm getting stared at now. I would describe Ritmos from my experience as a music puzzle game that is inspired or takes a lot of inspiration from music from all across the world, and I think of it as not only a game but also an interactive learning experience in a way. Every level you complete, every instrument you unlock, every soundscape that you build, you just keep learning in a really fun way about a lot of music that I'd never heard of. And I think to me that's what really makes it so special, is that it's very much a game, but I think it's as much just a fun learning tool. And then at the end of every level, you get instruments to jam around with, so you can make your own instruments. That was quite long-winded, but I feel that's quite a good way of explaining it. That's my personal way that I experienced it. I thought it was very much, I don't learn a lot anymore, especially about music. I used to play, the saxophone. I used to play the drums. I know a lot of music theory, but Ritmos was this entirely new learning experience. And that makes it sound like, learning's not fun. But no, it's a very fun way to learn. That's how I'd describe it. I hope that I've done you two proud, and that's a decent explanation. I hope it is. I'm seeking the approval.
It's definitely approved. that's like that's really also what we hoped for. Like we also got we got so happy when was one of the reviewers from Eurogamer. He mentioned how he actually started listening to Ethiopian jazz music afterwards and listening to the playlist we suggested and sent it to his friends and stuff like that. And that was like, if we could inspire people to have an interest in some music genres and teach them a little bit without teaching in that way, like inspire them.
Yeah,
I think that is what makes it that is what makes it so clever to me. And what I think one of the things we both really want to like ask you guys, and I know that I think people will be interested in, is knowing the story of how you both came to be where you are now, and where where those inspirations came from, and where the desire was to make a game like Ritmos as opposed to perhaps something a little bit more. There's lots of games that use music. There's lots of rhythm games and puzzle games that use music. But I think, where did that inspiration come from to do it in such an interesting way?
I think that's a twofold question, and maybe there's the music part, and then there's the game design part in some way. And I think the game design part you should maybe talk about, and I can talk about the like why choosing all these genres and stuff afterwards, maybe.
Yeah, I think like way back in the days before we made games together, me and Nils, I was in a band and Nils had a record. He still does actually, but I don't think you put out that many records.
Not besides from yours.
We used to have a record label, and he put out our records, and he was also the manager of the band, and that's sort of like how we know each other through that sort of musical connection. And then over the years, we both started making games, but not together, in different places. And I think 5 years ago, we both found ourselves freelancing, or actually sharing an office. It wasn't really planned or anything. It was just like we were together there making games, and why not like take our love for music and try to build something around that. We are both into a lot of different types of music and music genres from the world that I don't think are that exposed. And we would like to make some sort of experience where we would sort of like give that music to people, like to enjoy it as much as we do. So that's how I think at that time I had started a little bit making a music game prototype, but it wasn't like anything at all like it is today.
Now you actually took the music part, but okay. But I can also build on top of that one. I think also to I don't know. I've also always had an interest in music from all over the world and funny music instruments and stuff. And I used to travel a lot around the world and always gather instruments from wherever I came and buy. At the time where it was CDs, I used to buy a new CD or cassette tape of wherever I was to find that genre. We should also say that the band that Asger used to play in is called Analogic, and they used to like be inspired from like sample a lot of music from all around the world as well. So it was sort of a natural bridge to things. And much of the music chosen in Ritmos is music that we first of all think is interesting music in many ways, and has interesting instruments. But it's also music that has some interesting history in some way. For instance, the Ethiopian jazz music. It's kind of interesting that it was, for instance, only legal in a decade or something, and then it became illegal by the government, and it had to move to another country to continue, and stuff like that. And small things like the gamelan ensembles, they can't be played inside. They can only be played outside because it goes above the human threshold of pain to actually hear them. And there are just so many funny things about all these weird different genres. But I think in relation to the game design, I think you also always talk about that. You also had the idea that like in like game design and music composition has a lot in common. It's a lot about patterns, and maybe you should explain your better.
That was like I guess that's maybe the 5 years was trying to like come from the place where there was an idea that you should be able to make a game with music, like where you create music by playing the game. That something to me that felt like you should be able to do that somehow. But it was actually kind of hard because music is also about not having rules, or at least good music, I think. And games are all about rules, so there's some contradiction there. And I think the challenge was to sort of like find a good balance um, between rules and no rules and creativity. And I think part of like Tom, you talked about that you needed to get the gold on all the levels. Part of the reason that we have the option for you to not get gold and still proceed, and I should maybe explain that the rules of getting gold and not gold is if you sort of like recreate our intended pattern by playing the game. You can also not recreate that, and then you get bronze, but the game will still accept that. And that's sort of like a way to say like it's okay. you can do it your own way also if you want to, and you can still be allowed to play the game and progress. And
I did. I remember the first time I completed one without getting the gold, and I was like, "Oh, nice, we've got it." And then I got to the end of the planet, and I just looked, and I was like, "No, no, no, no! We have to go back in and change it." But I think it's good that option's there, because I think that's quite a. I guess it's like an accessibility thing. It still enables people to actually, make the music, and they can choose to do it however they want. I think one of the things we all found really interesting, and something that we definitely highlighted a lot during like pitching, is that most, like, you talk about making music, most games where you can make music, I'll go for like a really obvious example, like something like Guitar Hero. Like, it's a very, you press buttons on like a fake guitar, but this, like, the sensation of making the music is like you're playing a guitar. There's an instrument, and then the instrument makes music. Whereas the way you make music in Rhythmos is, in a way, the puzzle's entirely unrelated from the music, but it's not, if that makes sense. It's like a very different way to make music, and I think it is very unique in that regard, because you've managed to tie the two concepts together. And I think it would be really interesting if you could tell us a bit more about the process in linking the gameplay itself to the music. And I know we've spoke off the podcast previously about the hurdles that you went through with making sure that the music worked with the puzzles and that the puzzles worked with the music. And I think it'd be really interesting if you spoke a bit more about that.
I can maybe say how it starts when like often we have designed the puzzles, a planet with a nice puzzle. We have tested it out, and it sort of works, and it's not too easy and not too hard. And then I often got the planets, and then it was completely random what scale they were in, completely random instruments, and everything was just random. So they sounded horrible. Yeah. And then somehow I slowly had to like find a scale to put it in and make some patterns and put in notes and stuff, and slowly try to make it into a composition. And there's a quite big sophisticated music system behind Rhythmos, so you can choose between tons of different scales from all over the world, and you can make patterns and modulations and stuff like that. And then you can say that you played different steps in a scale, and whatever. There's a lot of technical stuff like that. And
that's interesting. Having that control over what you wanted to put in the game when you were able, Did you have to sacrifice anything from the original vision that just wasn't doable? And I guess the second part of that is, was there ever a point where you thought, we're going to need a publisher to help get this game to happen? And if so, did you think you were going to lose all that creative control? Hence, you tried to sort of focus on self-publishing so you could really have the game in the vision that you intended, where technically possible.
Like, so you mean if we were to go on compromise with making different kinds of music or something because of a publisher, or something?
I think it's more mechanics. So obviously you talked about the things you wanted to try and achieve and the hurdles you faced. The first part of that was there anything that you had to leave on the cutting room floor that just wasn't possible? And the second part of that was, if you thought at any point we might need a publisher to help us finish this, did you ever feel like they were going to take too much of that vision away, or did you really want to stay independent in order to see your game in the way that you intended it to?
I think also going back to what you said, Tom, like we have like a core part in the game design that we wanted to create a game where you create music and you're not just reacting to music. Most music games, you are reacting, like it's like Guitar Hero scenario where here's something and you have to push the buttons at the correct time. And we don't find that very creative and not that interesting also. Like there's a lot of those type of games. So we wanted to create something else. And I think when we talked to publishers and we told them that we were making a music game, that's what they thought of. And a lot of them, they got kind of disappointed when they saw our puzzle game instead. So I think we had some some obstacles in that regard, like being so different from the others. But on the other hand, like the puzzle part made us connect with the Astra game community that helped us fund the game, and that's like an American fund that supports thinky games, as they call it. They're well into puzzle games and supporting that side of gameplay. So yeah, I guess that worked out in the end anyways for us.
Was I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think I'd like to pick your brain a bit more. What was the process in picking the eventual genres that went into Ritmos? Were there any along the way that you really wanted to get in but wouldn't quite fit, or were the things that from start to finish, was it quite set on like certain genres?
It was definitely, like, just to give an example, we have one of the genres and one of the systems is Hawaiian music from the Golden Age. And that's, in many ways, it seems very straightforward compared to some of the other genres like Indonesian gamelan music and polyrhythmic African music and stuff. But that was, as an example, that was the by far most difficult system to implement music-wise, because that music is very like on the beat and very straight in some way. And that's actually really, really hard to implement in Ritmos, because all the puzzles are not naturally like all divided with the same length and stuff like that. And also if they have to be like very if they all have to have the same shape and same size and same pattern length and stuff like that, they also often becomes a little bit too predictive and too easy to solve in many ways. So in that way, some of the genres that may sound easy were actually super hard to do. So that was really a pain to do that genre. And because of that, we have probably chosen some genres that are not too that can be a little bit abstract once in a while, where you can like
a bit less rigid. Like there's a bit more room to play around.
That's like one very technical reason for not choosing some, but it's also something with the historical thing and the funny stories and the also perhaps trying to pick some genres that most people may not know about.
what was the process of testing these puzzles? Obviously, you guys are the creators. I presume you know the answers. How did you test those out? Was it friends and family? Was there like an actual focus group there? And what genres proved the most difficult in testing?
It was a little bit of everything. My brother, he's the one who made most of the planets that we have, and the process was that he was sitting offside and just making planets and puzzles, and he would send them to me, and I would try them out, and they would be way too difficult. That's usually how it is with the puzzles. And then we would sort of like a state where they are not so difficult, but good enough that you could like sort of like progress with them, and then we tested on friends and families also, got feedback from that, and we also used a service called Go Testify, where you can upload your game and you'll get a recording of people playing it, and they would rate it and difficulty wise and stuff like that.
A really nice service actually.
Yeah.
Where you can recognize words and stuff. So if they mention the word frustrated or annoying or whatever, then it highlights a point in the video, and that's quite nice. Also, just to mention, if there were planets that were hard, then like sound-wise, the 8-bit planet was a little bit complicated, mainly because that genre is a bit more rough or in your face in some way. So if you were stuck in a puzzle there and the loop was just like continuing and you couldn't pass that puzzle, it was a bit extra frustrating with that.
I think it's interesting you've said that actually, because I think the 8-bit was the one I struggled on the most. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking in my head, I don't know, in some of the others was the music kind of guiding me in a way, even though it's like it's not, but is there that element of, I don't know, that's actually quite interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but when looking back on like playing all the planets, yeah, the 8-bit one maybe was like the one that I struggled with the most. Not necessarily because of the mechanics, but I wonder if that was because of the music. Oh, I'm going to have to go and play it again now because I need to find out. So that's very interesting. I hadn't even
It could
thought
also
about
be
that.
because that it just felt more difficult, because a lot of people are mentioning that the sounds on that planet in that system are quite harsh. And so it could be that it's actually like, it feels like it's taking longer because the sounds are sort of like they're more exaggerated there, where in many of the others we have tried to like make the sounds like smooth. I don't know if that's the correct word, but like so like ironed out, so you don't really get annoyed by staying in a puzzle for too long.
They're more subtle.
Subtle, yeah, that's better word than smooth.
But it's also it's really the subtle 8-bit sounds that I've chosen. There are many instruments in the project that are not used, and they're really characteristic and really nice if you hear an 8-bit composition normally, but they just really didn't work there because they just was like really annoying to hear.
You got to try these things out. I found it interesting you mentioned some of those words that frequently came up were like frustrating or difficult in those early levels, because I think part of the messaging we were really able to get across to media was it's challenging, but it's not meant to be a frustrating puzzle game. And a big part of the music was offering that almost relaxing experience. And I think that was something that definitely resonated with people. So
you and your music puns, you'll notice this. He does it all the time. He'll slip in little puns related to everything. You got to watch out for them. No, that is a very good point actually, Jack. Yeah, we really. And I saw a couple of like Steam reviews where people mention like the difficulty and maybe the lack thereof in some cases, but I think, and maybe it's something again for you guys to explain maybe, but from the way I understand it, I don't ever think the intention was for it to be this very, very difficult puzzle game that you'll be spending hours and hours on one puzzle, and there's a place for that, but I never felt like that was something that was missing, because I didn't think from my experience, and as Jack was saying, from the way we were pushing it out to people, I don't think that was the intended experience. It was, the puzzles were there to accompany the music. The puzzles weren't necessarily supposed to distract you from the music to the point where you're kind of blocking the music out because you're on the same loop for 20 minutes and you can't solve this puzzle. So was that a very conscious design choice?
Yeah. Now, one thing that sucks in puzzle games is being stuck. But one thing that sucks even more is being stuck while listening to the same loop. And we sort of like had that problem right from the beginning. And also, like we wanted, like the thing in Whitmoss is that you're building these loops on top of each other, and you get an idea of how the music is constructed because you start out with the base layer and you get layers on top of that, and it's fun to like experience the music getting generated in that way. And we wanted people to experience that as much as playing puzzles, I think. So we actually we spent a lot of time making the puzzles easier. Because, as I said earlier, they started out really difficult, most of them, and then it's like concretely it's about like making traps for the player. When you play the game, you have to solve this maze, and the amount of ways that you can solve it, you can reduce that a lot by making dead ends, essentially. And by looking at the tests, we could see puzzles that the players would struggle with, and we could see, okay, if we just add a dead end here, most people will just like rule out this direction to begin with, and it's a lot easier to get through the options of getting through the maze is a lot less.
Yes. The idea from the beginning was also to make a meditative experience in many ways, and it sort of didn't become meditative if you got annoyed by an annoying loop. And I think we also, a little early in the project, we had the idea that the puzzle should be harder and harder and harder and harder. But pretty early we discovered that they should actually just more or less, I mean, that's the tutorial level, but then besides from that, they actually more or less have the same difficulty level all through the game, but just with a twist, and you have to learn a new mechanic on every system and things like that. But they don't necessarily become harder at all.
Yeah,
it's we tried to aim for actually more or less same difficulty level.
It feels quite knowledge based, in like the progression you make through the game is very much just tied to your knowledge and understanding of how each mechanic works. And through every level, once you get that new mechanic, I always felt like the first one was a bit of a challenge because it was like, oh, you had to play around with this new mechanic. I can't, you know, the one where there's like the portals and the lines will like go through the portals and pop out somewhere else. I remember coming to that one and thinking, oh, this is like it's a bit strange, and taking a bit of time to get used to that one. But once you grasp how you can interact with that element, most of the puzzles eventually fall into place, and they don't feel easy, but they don't feel too hard either. It feels very much, every time you solve something, it's quite a natural conclusion to where you've been across that whole level. Apart from, I think the hardest one for me was where it was going, the one that was like a full planet. I can't remember which world that was. Oh yeah, that was, they were tricky just because you were going from like line to line. But that was I feel it does a very good job of selling those like eureka moments for players, and they feel very earned even if you get to some of them quite quickly. And I think again that you know, with our messaging, it was very much on the fact that it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. And I love puzzle games, but I think a lot of puzzle games are not always designed to be enjoyable. I think sometimes they're designed to be a bit frustratingly fun as opposed to being super enjoyable and relaxing.
Yeah, that's what it is. I think it's something you referred to earlier, guys, when you talked about music games tend to be of a certain style, and you know, when you're talking to those publishers and you're having to convince them it's something else, that was really part of the messaging for us talking to media, was demystifying what a puzzle game was and what a music game was, and saying it's neither of these things. It's something completely new. This is why you need to check it out. And you used the term meditative a few minutes ago, and I think again that was partly why I think the games media enjoyed it so much, or were willing to take a look, because we did an episode on just how busy they are and how many pitches they get, and we really were lucky enough to have something unique we could put in front of them that was different. And it was probably a great break between hardcore RPGs and things that they could take time out and enjoy a game while still challenging themselves. And I think what was really clear was that the passion behind the game showed through. It felt genuine, which is, again, something I think in a sea of AAA releases that just kind of get lost amongst each other that really helped you stand out.
I think the world music side of things as well was something else that was quite, whenever everything that we do, a lot of it is so focused on like the USPs and what makes something truly different. And we're at the point now where so many games come out and so many people are working on games, big companies, small companies, solo developers, and it feels like most ideas have been explored, and a lot of that is because those ideas are really good ideas. And we keep like something like the Metroidvania, well, it continues to be so popular because it's something which people like and people get on with it. It's quite a safe decision, I guess. But the decision to go off and kind of explore something a little bit different with these completely unique forms of music, I mean, obviously from your perspective, that was very much a conscious decision, and I think that was something that really we could use to our benefit.
Actually, we actually tried making another game before this one called Sausage Swing Club, where we would try to sort of like make a game that we thought people would want, and that didn't go well at all. So on this game, we were more like, let's just make the game that we want to make, and we thought would be fun to work on for a long time, and then see how that goes. And I really, really love when people are getting that, like, it is actually our passion that we put into it, and the thing that we wanted to like, this is our little thing that we want to make to the world.
There has actually also been put quite a lot of hours in a lot of other things than the game. Somehow there's a lot of hours put in curating playlists and writing about the genres and researching about the genres and all those kind of things.
Was, as Jack was saying, because you can tell there's so much, you can see just by playing it and experiencing it, like the passion that's gone into it. When it was, I guess, the time to like release that into the world, and how, I'm trying to think how to say this. Do you think people have, like, critics or just normal consumers, do you think that people have kind of experienced it in the way you thought they would? Or is there anything that you've seen that you thought, oh, that's like interesting, we didn't necessarily think someone would experience it that way? Or was there even like a degree of like trepidation of like, oh, we have this, like, we think we have this message and this experience which, like, we think this is how people are going to see it, but what if they don't?
It was extremely scary putting it out because it was just so much work that went into it, and we didn't know essentially how, like, we tested on friends and families and those go testify people, but we didn't know how it would be perceived. And obviously it's extremely nice when people are getting, I think it's, I wouldn't say divided, but I think some people really gets it. The people who gets it really gets it, and they like, so like it's a game for them. Like, finally somebody made a game where I can discover new music and that sort of thing. And I think the guy from Rock Paper Shotgun, he wrote that he had learned how to dissect music in a new way. He would listen to music in another way now that he has sort of like this experience of listening to the layers being built on top of each other, and that just makes me extremely happy to hear that sort of thing.
We also we really had a lot of discussions also about all this information in the game about the music genres and like all the text part or all the educational written part. We really had a lot of discussions about how much of it should we put in. Should we have it at all? Should we just cancel having that? How much and like all that kind of stuff. How big should the text be? Should we like at some point it was much bigger and you couldn't proceed the game without reading it, and then we decided to make it something you could choose and you could also ignore it in some way. And at some point it was also a little bit too small, in my opinion. It got a bit back, and so I'm personally I'm very I'm a bit surprised actually that a lot of people actually saw that as a really, really nice thing, but it actually got quite a bit of mention that was in also, and that, I mean, that made me really happy. So that part was also
there's
somehow.
There's almost, when you say games can serve as educational tools, people go, sometimes people have a bit of resistance to that, and other people go, well, I want to play games for fun, I don't want to be bored learning. But it's an interesting point touched on there, trying to get a mixture of it's still going to be fun and interesting and not in the way of the game, but also if people want to learn more, then absolutely that's their kind of their way.
Yeah, I think probably
I guess
probably all of us have a bit of allergy towards educational games. I think it's often something you have been presented like in school or something, where it's really ugly looking bad games that teach you math or
that's you've unlocked some memories there. God, yeah.
I mean, sometimes they can be good, but there are also a lot of examples of, okay, kids can see that this is not a game, that's actually an educational tool where the grown-ups are trying to put in some teaching in.
I think on the learning aspect, I think a thing that I found really interesting was that there's enough there to pique your curiosity without, clicking on an instrument and like a whole essay appears and it's like, there's there's these little interesting bits, and there was quite a few which kind of pushed me to then go, I'd go on my laptop and be like, I want to know more about this. And it's the same as with like the instruments and like creating the the loops, and as soon as you unlock every instrument, I feel like from my experience, the first thing I did when I unlocked a new instrument was just like start spamming all the different things just to like see what different the scales and see what different noises you can make, and then I do that for a minute and then be like, let's actually try and make something. And to be honest, it's got me quite interested in actually like looking at like beat production more, and also I think it's Liam from Rock Paper Shotgun. I think in the same way as he spoke about looking at music more, I now find myself subconsciously, and I think part of this is because of having played Ritmos and building the music up, I'll be listening to music and I end up in this weird like trance of focusing like very specifically on like the 808s in a certain song, or picking up like a certain loop, and I just completely ignore like the lyrics of the rest of this song because I'm just like transfixed by I'm just hearing this like hi-hat that I can hear on like every bar, the third beat there's a hi-hat, and I thought it was very strange. I think it's the learning experience is so well done because it opens that door and it invites people in, but it doesn't force them in. It says like, have a look at this. You've not heard of this before. Now you've heard of it. This is what it sounds like. Here's something interesting about it. And, go and find out some more if you want. I guess that links to the wider presentation, and I know quite a few people, like media people I've spoke to, and quite a few of the pieces that we saw spoke about like the record collection, and obviously vinyl and records are such a boom again, and I think that was another very, very conscious choice, I'd imagine, that really sold the package as a whole, and showed again that it's about the music. There's puzzles, but it is about the music, and the whole experience is about music. Which now I'm really desperate for a vinyl of all the songs. So I'm gonna be honest, I want the vinyl there, but
we thought about that.
yeah, I thought
Also,
it was interesting.
I was going to ask, is that something you consider?
Yeah, the difficult thing is that a lot of the loops are fairly short in the game, so
It's not really any
yeah.
arrangement.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You could always put it on one of the I can't think what the little ones are called, like the 13 inches, are they? Yeah, the 7s. Yeah, not that I'm trying to sell you on making a load of vinyls, but just something to consider. I will commission one just for me. I do not mind. I think on that note, it would be interesting to before we wrap up, have a small conversation and about like what's coming and what's next. By the time this podcast is out and published and in the world, we will be in the launch window for what comes next. So do you guys want to talk about the next phase of Ritmos and the calendar for the future?
Yeah. I mean, pretty soon we will release a mobile version of the game for Android and for iOS. So that's sort of the next step. And then we're also working quite hard right now on some extra sun systems. So there are 3 sun systems made now. They're not completely done, but there are 3 systems.
Are you in the phase now of the puzzles and thinking, no, this does not work, we need to change it? Everything works apart from the very last one. Scrap it. We need to start again. Has the just really quickly, what's the process been like? Because we've worked a lot in the past with games that might launch on mobile first and then come to other platforms, or they'll have simultaneous releases on like Steam and mobile. What's the process been like? I can imagine to some degree you're probably working on them at the same time, but what's it been like translating the Steam experience, the Switch experience to mobile? Has that been as perhaps like tricky as you thought it would be, or what has that experience been like?
The game is made in the Unity engine, so theoretically we should just be able to switch build target and then deploy for mobile. But unfortunately, it wasn't.
You go in Unity and just press the port to mobile, and then it just does it all. The wizardry.
It does have that button that you can just press, but there's a lot of UI work that needs to be redone, and the inputs need to be mapped in a certain way on mobile, and there's a lot of tweaks that you have to do to just make it feel nice. And in portrait, the mobile version would be in portrait mode, whereas the others are in landscape mode. So there's a lot of adjustments that has to be made. Fortunately, the game was out on Switch, the Nintendo Switch, before, so it's which is I guess sort of like on par with the most mobile phones these days. So it is already pretty optimized. So yeah.
Well, that was a lot of work we actually started making it for mobile back in the days, and then we decided to make it for Switch and PC. So there was also a lot of work in how to translate the game to controls and keyboard and things like that. Especially with the instruments, how to control the instruments. That was actually easier on mobile than on Switch, for instance.
I think Yeah, I mean, I played it on Steam, but luckily managed to have a Steam Deck, and I think the second time I played it, I did use the touch controls, and it was a little bit finicky, but I think that's just because the Steam Deck has quite a bad touch screen, which people don't talk about. But the touch screen on the deck isn't great, but I think by design it I can imagine it will translate very well to like mobile. I'm quite excited to give it a go, because I can imagine it will really, it's just another way to kind of get really hands-on with the experience. And again, it's that way of making music, and you can just use your finger to, you know, plot out the lines, and I think that'll be quite immersive. I'm saying that I'm so excited to play this. Oh, I need to calm down. But no, that's like really cool. I'm excited for the new levels as well. That'll be amazing. But I just, every time I play it now, I just think about the hard, like that puzzle music balance, and I just think like, oh, I don't understand how all this works. I don't understand how this actually comes together and works so well. But yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up. Would you say, Jack? I think we've
yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot. So to summarize, you know, we've gone in depth about really identifying what the USPs of the game were, and how that, you know, we found angles that resonated with media, which led to all the coverage. I mean, we're not trying to brag, but all you got to do is type Ritmos in on your favorite search engine, and there's a lot of results. You know, we were really lucky to get national newspapers interested, because again, I think the game is just that different that it does resonate with people. So something listeners might want to consider is, where can they go, cliche, outside the box with it, with their project, if there are these other angles. You know, we talked about the educational element here, really humanizing these puzzles, and saying it could be a challenge, but there's also a lot of different ways you can enjoy puzzle games and think about puzzle and music games in a different way. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot of really interesting stuff. And Tom, massive smile on your face when you revealed there at the end there's more content coming. So
what can I say? I honestly, this is the thing. I could sit down with you two for hours, because I find it, the whole process behind the game to me is so fascinating. I mean, I love music. I know a lot of people love music, but it's just so.
Should we mention which genres it is, or is that a bad idea?
Ooh, that's completely.
I mean, I'm gonna leave, if you want to say something, we're not gonna stop you, but that's your decision.
Exclusive one level reveal.
Say one of them.
Yeah, okay. I don't know which one. I mean, there will be a psychedelic funk planet from Beirut from the 70s, for instance, and there will also be a.
That would be
yeah, okay. There will also be a circuit bending planet, or a system of circuit bending. I
think you should explain what that is.
Old toys. If you don't know what that is, that's like taking musical toys and stuff like that and short circuiting them and putting potentiometer.
Where do you find these ideas? This is what I don't understand. This is what I never understood was.
Well, that's like that's a genre of like an electronic music genre in some way. It's very tied to noise music and stuff like that as well. Where you like go music.
I feel like just Floppy Club's vinyl collection will just be, and like CDs, and it'll just be the most. I feel like I could just spend. Yeah, there we go. We're gonna go and grab one now. We have to
office collection.
I have to. I'm gonna fly over one day and just come and look through all of the vinyls, because it's just so interesting. So interesting.
Our boss John would love that, the big vinyl machine here.
There will also be a top
big vinyl.
That's interesting.
There will also be a 70s dub planet. That was sort of obvious to make that as well, and our 3D artist, he also suggested that, and that sort of made a lot of sense to do that.
I like that. I mean, just for listeners' context, how many are you in Floppy Club? Because it sounds very collaborative, and obviously everyone's getting to put their ideas in.
We have 3 people working like full time in the company, And then we are some external people, a graphic designer and a game designer and people porting and stuff for us. So we are a small group, and we actually are just 3 people in the hardcore.
Look at that. 3 people and more creativity than about 85% of the AAA space combined. But I'm not going to say anything else on that subject, but it's not wrong.
You should go into www.ritmos.club. I was about to say .com, but all our websites is always .club. So it's ritmos.club, and there you can read about the game, but you can also find information about different music genres and whatever updates we have. You get links to where you can buy the game and links to all our other social.
And definitely do that. Do it. It's really good. I know. I mean, obviously, bias aside, from having worked on this project, it is an amazing game. I feel like I'm going to get to the end of the year and I'm going to do my list of all my favorite games, and it's going to have to be on there. I'll have to disclose the fact that helped with blah blah blah. That's fine, but it has to be on there. It's such an interesting premise, and I feel like a lot of I play a lot of games with interesting ideas, and they don't quite manage to get across the finish line of it, and it's such a shame because I think there's so much potential here. But Ritmos is kind of at the first time of asking. I guess I'll steal one of Jack's sports analogies. It's hit the home run straight away and really managed to.
Tom, we're on music today. You got to say
hit the right note with a little dung on a little xylophone. But yeah, I mean, thanks to you both for joining us today. I think it's been really interesting. Yeah, and
thanks for having us. Doing
no, yeah, 100%. It's been amazing. As interesting and as fun as the game itself, and I think that's the best advertisement for Ritmos. So yeah, I know they've already said it, but definitely go and try it out. I know you were recently part of the Puzzle Fest on Steam as well, but go and give it a try anyway. And when it comes to mobile, be sure to give it a try there as well, like I will be. So we're trying it on every platform, but yeah, we get to the point now where we get to the end, and then I ramble on and on. So I'm just going to let Jack do the outro I will not speak because I just ramble.
the fade out for another music thing. No, I mean, thank you for listening. If you like the sound of our tune, please check out our other episodes available on all the usual podcast platforms. We're available on Twitter at Big Games Machine. All the previous episodes, as well as extra resources, can be found for free on the Big Games Machine website, www.biggamesmachine.com. I kind of want to put a .club thing now, but that's your thing, not ours. So thanks again, guys, and thanks for everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for hosting us again today, Jack, and thanks to you too.
Thanks for having us.